हाय गाइस, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। आज के वीडियो का मेन टॉपिक है केमिकल सिग्नलिंग बिटवीन सेल्स। In this video we will discuss the difference between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So I hope you like my video. So let's start to our topic. Neurotransmission in the ANS is an example of more generally process of chemical signaling between cells. In addition to neurotransmission, other types of chemical signaling include secretion of hormones and the release of the local mediators. So, the chemical signaling between cells are done by three different ways. We will discuss these ways in a diagram. Here you can see this diagram. There are three major paths through which the chemical signaling occur between cells. Number 1, endocrine signaling. Number 2, direct contact. Number 3, synaptic signaling. Endocrine signaling, which includes hormones, you can see here. I show you this hormone transfer through the blood vessel and provide the signal to the target cell, and where the action and the response happen. And direct contact, second one, between two cells there is a gap junction. One is the signaling cell and the other is a target cell at which response is produced. And the third one, you can see synaptic signaling in between a neuron or nerve cell and the target cell. There is a synapses between, through which the chemical signaling happen. Okay, so here they have mentioned three parts: hormones, local mediators, and neurotransmitters. Number one, hormones are the specialized endocrine cells which secrete hormones into the bloodstream. So we will discuss hormones in detail in later chapters, but here the important point is hormone released through the bloodstream, where they travel through the body exerting effects on broadly distributed target cells. And the second one is local mediators. Most cells in body secrete chemicals that act locally on cells in immediate environment. Because these chemical signals are rapidly destroyed or removed, they do not enter the blood and are not distributed throughout the body. So these are the local mediators. They directly act from one cell to another. The examples are histamine and prostaglandin. I have highlighted it for you. So they are not travel through the bloodstream. They directly contact from one cell to another. Third one is a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter which help in signaling between one neuron cell and the target cell. Communication between nerve cells and between nerve cells and affected organs occur through the release of specific chemicals signals from the nerve terminals. This release is triggered by arrival of, you can see I have this action potential at the nerve ending, leading to depolarization. An increase in intracellular calcium initiates fusion of synaptic vesicles with the presynaptic membrane and the release of their contact. So this is the mechanism how the neurotransmitter act when it releases from a nerve cell, and the action on the yeah, it means how the neurotransmitter release from the nerve cell. So there is a nerve cell, and when there is a signal comes, the calcium intake increases. When the calcium intake increases, as a result the neurotransmitter releases from the neuron. So this is a depolarization mechanism, and it's very important. This is the multiple choice question point, that when action potential arises, intracellular calcium ions increase. An increase in intracellular calcium ions initiate fusion of the synaptic vesicles with the presynaptic membrane and a release of their content. So intracellular calcium ions increase. This is the multiple choice question point. Neurotransmitter rapidly diffuse across the synaptic cleft or space between neurons and combine with the specific receptor on the postsynaptic cell. So this is the mechanism of action, how the neurotransmitter release, and it acts on the effector cells. Okay. So the next one is the membrane receptor. All neurotransmitters and most hormones and local mediators are too hydrophilic to penetrate the lipid bilayers of target cell plasma membrane. Instead, their signal is mediated by binding to the specific receptors on cell surface of target organs. What are the receptor is defined as a recognition site for substance. It has a binding specificity and is coupled to process that eventually evoke a response. So, for the receptor, the important point is bind the receptor has two major points, that is the binding specificity. First it binds, and binding specificity, and its second one is coupled to process that eventually works a response, and second one is it coupled to process. It means it produce some kind of response, some kind of it involved in some kind of process that produce the response. We will discuss in detail how the receptor involved in this mechanism. So whenever the drug or any chemical enter into the body, it finds its receptor. At the receptor there is a binding site where the chemical binds to the receptor, and after binding some processes occur like ATP release, NADPH formation, and different calcium release, sodium and potassium pathways. There are some pathways through which it produces some kind of response. And the important point is receptors are proteins. This is the multiple choice question too. The receptors are proteins. Types of neurotransmitter. Although over 50 signal molecules in the nervous system have been identified, norepinephrine and the closely related epinephrine, acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, histamine, glutamine, gamma aminobutyric acid are most commonly involved in the action of therapeutically useful drugs. So these are the neurotransmitters. So if anyone say how many, what are some given the some names of the neurotransmitter, then you can explain this. So acetylcholine and norepinephrine are primary chemical signals in ANS. This is the multiple choice question too. So for the ANS, the primary one are the acetylcholine and the norepinephrine, and for the central nervous system, a wide variety of neurotransmitter functions like gamma aminobutyric acid, glutamate, histamine, dopamine, serotonin. These are for the CNS. Acetylcholine. The autonomic nerve fibers can be divided into two groups based on the type of neurotransmitter released. If transmission is mediated by the acetylcholine, the neuron is termed as cholinergic. This is the important point. The cholinergic neurons are those which release acetylcholine. Acetylcholine mediates the transmission of nerve impulses across autonomic ganglia in both the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So this is the important point too. For both sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, is at the autonomic ganglia, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. It is the neurotransmitter at the adrenal medulla. And the second important point is acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter at the adrenal medulla. Transmission from the autonomic postganglionic nerves to effector organs in the parasympathetic system and a few sympathetic system also involves the release of the acetylcholine. So at the postsynaptic nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. So acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter for both sympathetic and parasympathetic autonomic ganglion, and it is released from the adrenal medulla. And third point is for the postganglionic nerves of the parasympathetic, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. In somatic nervous system, the transmission at the neuromuscular junctions, the junction of the nerve fibers and voluntary muscles, is also cholinergic. So we should note that the somatic nervous system have no ganglia. There is a direct transmission, and this transmission is under control by the acetylcholine. So somatic nervous system is also under control of the acetylcholine. Norepinephrine and epinephrine. When norepinephrine and epinephrine are the neurotransmitters, the fiber is termed adrenergic. Okay, when the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, the fiber is cholinergic, and when the neurotransmitter is epinephrine or epinephrine, the fiber is termed as adrenergic. In sympathetic system, norepinephrine mediates the transmission of nerve impulses. I'm here at this point. I will highlight it for you. I'm here at this point. Okay. In the parasympathetic system, norepinephrine mediates the transmission of nerve impulses from autonomic postganglionic nerves to effector organs. A few sympathetic fibers, such as those involved in sweating, are cholinergic, and for simplicity, they are all shown in figure. So we will see in the figure. So the important point is autonomic postganglionic nerves for the sympathetic nervous system releases norepinephrine, epinephrine, but their autonomic ganglia involved in the acetylcholine. So there is an flowchart. You can see at first point when there is the preganglionic here, preganglionic neuron. At this point, there are three things: sympathetic innervation of adrenal medulla, sympathetic system, parasympathetic system. This sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is under first neurotransmitter which is released is acetylcholine, and this acetylcholine is from acts at the ganglionic transmission. This one, okay. So at the nicotinic receptor, the sympathetic at the nicotinic receptor, they act on the nicotinic receptor in both cases. They act on the nicotinic receptor in both cases, but for the post-ganglionic, for the sympathetic nervous system, it's norepinephrine, and for the parasympathetic, it's also acetylcholine. Okay, so you got my point. At the first point, both are same acetylcholine, but at the postsynaptic, and for the sympathetic it's norepinephrine, and for the parasympathetic it's acetylcholine. There is a two multiple choice question in this diagram, and the third multiple choice question is norepinephrine acts on the. We'll take the yellow one. Okay. Norepinephrine acts on the adrenergic receptor, and acetylcholine acts on the muscarinic receptors. So the fibers which are involved in the sympathetic nervous system are called adrenergic, and the fibers which are involved in the parasympathetic nervous system are called muscarinic, and then it acts on the effector organs. Okay, and for the somatic system, there is a no ganglia. This is the multiple choice question, no ganglia, and there is a direct pathway and is under control of the acetylcholine and the nicotinic receptor. It also acts on nicotinic receptor, which is the skeletal muscles. So sympathetic nervous system acts on the skeletal muscles, not the smooth muscles. This is all the summary of the neurotransmitter released. So our topic, the next one, is signal transduction in effector cell. How the signal transduction occur in effector cells. The binding of the chemical signals to receptor activate enzymatic process within the cell membrane that ultimately results in a cellular response, such as okay, this one. phosphorylation of the intercellular proteins. The binding of the chemical signals to receptors activates enzymatic process within the cell membrane that ultimately results in a cellular response such as the phosphorylation of the intercellular proteins. Okay, or the changes in conduction of ion channels. A neurotransmitter can be thought of as a signal and a receptor as a signal detector and transducer. Second messenger molecules produced in response to a neurotransmitter binding to the receptor translate the extracellular signal into the response that may be further propagated or amplified within the cell. Each component serves as a link in communication between extracellular events and the chemical changes within the cells. So this is a simple process. Just when effector when the signal comes in the effector cell, then the phosphorylation of the intercellular cells occur, and there is a direct and the neurotransmitter can be thought of as a signal between and a receptor as a signal detector. The receptor detect that signal, and the second messenger may be ATP, may be other ions molecule produced in response to the neurotransmitter binding to the receptor translate the extracellular signal into a response. So some second messenger releases which convert the neurotransmitter into the some kind of response. Second point here is membrane receptor affecting ion permeability. What are those membrane receptors that affects of the ion permeability? So the important thing is what are the ionotropic receptors here. Neurotransmitter receptors are membrane proteins that provide binding site that recognize as a response to neurotransmitter molecules. Some receptors such as the postsynaptic nicotinic receptors, this one, in the skeletal muscles are directly linked to the membrane ion channels. Therefore, binding of the neurotransmitter occurs rapidly within fraction of millisecond and directly affects ion permeability. These types of the receptors are ionotropic. So the multiple choice question is nicotinic receptors are ionotropic receptors. Nicotinic receptors are ionotropic receptor because they are directly linked to membrane ion channels, and the neurotransmitter transmit the signals rapidly within the fraction of seconds because of the ion involvement. So you have to memorize it that the nicotine receptor are ionotropic receptor, and this is the multiple choice question. The second one is metabrotopic receptor, membrane receptor coupled to the second messengers. And in this receptor, the second messengers are involved. Ionotropic receptor, which is directly involved ions, and the metabotropic receptor, which involve the second messengers. Many receptors are not directly coupled to ion channels, rather the receptor signals recognition of a bound neurotransmitter by initiating a series of reactions that ultimately result in specific intracellular response. So this is a second messenger molecule because they intervene between the original message and the neurotransmitter hormones, and the ultimately affect the cells are part of the cascade of events that translate neurotransmitter binding into the cellular response usually through the invention of the G protein. The two most widely recognized second messenger are adenyl cyclase and calcium phosphatidylinositol system. So second messengers here are adenyl cyclase and calcium phosphate system. The receptor coupled to the second messenger system are known as metabotropic receptor. So the metabotropic receptors are those which are coupled with the second messengers. Muscarinic and adrenergic receptors are example of the metabotropic receptor. These are the important points. So nicotinic receptors are ionotropic, and uh, muscarinic and adrenergic receptors are the metabotropic receptor. Here you can see in the diagram, receptor coupled to the ion channels, ionotropic, changes in membrane potential ionic concentrations within the cell. So you can see neurotransmitter acts. Neurotransmitter act at this point, then chloride ions go inside. This is the ionotropic, so ions changing occur. Chloride ion goes in, and when the chloride ion go inside, the changes in the membrane potential ionic concentration within the cells. So the second thing is receptor coupled to the adenyl cyclase. This is the adenyl cyclase and metabotropic receptor. Hormones or neurotransmitter act at this point, and there is a gamma or a monobutyric acid GABA receptor you can see, or G protein couple receptors. These are the G protein couple receptor. So here the second messenger releases, which is adenyl cyclase. This is the second messenger, and protein phosphorylation occur, and it produce the response. So the third one is receptor coupled to the diacylglycerol and inositol receptor. This is also the metabotropic receptor. Okay, this one is the receptor coupled to the adenyl cyclase, and this one is the receptor coupled to the diacylglycerol or triphosphate. We have discussed it already, that the adenyl cyclase and calcium and phosphatidase system are the metabotropic system. So here the second messenger is phospholipase C, and these are the G protein coupled and inositol triphosphate releases and produces the response. So three mechanism whereby binding a neurotransmitter leads to a cellular effect. These are the three mechanism. The one is ionotropic, the second one is the metabotropic, and the metabotropic involves two second messengers. One is adenyl cyclase and the second is inositol triphosphate. So it's all about neurotransmitter and the types of neurotransmitter, and what are the mechanisms through which the neurotransmitter sends impulses. So I hope you like and understand all this topic, and also we have discussed the difference between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And in the other video we will discuss some multiple choice questions that will clear your concepts. So I hope you like this video. Kindly like my channel and subscribe my channel, and never forget to click on the ring button, uh, and send your comment here any question or any queries you have about the nervous system. We have completed this chapter. The next one we will discuss the multiple choice question in the next video. So I hope you will be connected with me. So like my video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.